These are tough times for marketers. Costs are rising and inflation is high. Margins are under pressure. But you're not powerless. There is something you can do. Profit margins have a big influence on whether or not you should invest in advertising or other marketing communications. When profit margins are high, advertising investment can pay back quickly. When margins are tight, then it's very hard to get advertising to pay back. Now, margins are affected by revenues and costs, and as we saw in part 1, we don't expect revenues to be too much of a problem for most brands over the next year or so. Inflation means that even though the economy goes into recession, top-line revenues will rise for most brands, some more than others. The problem is on the other side of the equation, costs. Costs are rising. We're seeing inflation in commodities prices, input prices, wages, and capital costs, and that's squeezing margins. So, in order to make your marketing pay back, in order to make investment possible, you've got to maintain and restore those profit margins. And that means passing costs on to consumers. Now, when times are tough, many marketers reach for the first weapon in their arsenal, the most obvious thing, and that's price promotions. I'm going to argue that price promotions are not the answer this time round. Why is that? Well, when you look at the top-line sales data, the kind of data that you get from, say, Nielsen, and you look at the effects of promotions, the effects of promotions appear to be quite big and quite dramatic. In this chart, I'm sort of illustrating what the typical split between promoted and non-promotional sales are for, say, an FMCG brand. It would be quite common for maybe half or more than half of your sales to be sold on deal. And so it appears that promotions are generating a great deal of incremental sales and revenue and profit. What you will find is that some of those incremental sales are not incremental at all. For a start, what econometrics reveals is that some of the sales are subsidized. That is to say, you're selling to people who would have bought your product already, but you're just selling at a lower price. That's obviously not a benefit, it's a cost to your business. You're giving away money. Then we see that some of those sales are time shifted. You're bringing sales forward. You're getting someone to buy maybe 2 packs this week rather than 1 pack this week, 1 pack next week. You're not increasing the overall amount of sales in the long run. You're just bringing sales forward. Then we see that some sales are relocated. You run a promotion in Sainsbury's and you steal sales from Tesco. That's great news for Sainsbury's, but not necessarily good news for you if you're a brand owner. So that the true incremental volume is often much, much smaller than the top-line sales data reveals. Most volume is not incremental. And because most volume is not incremental, most promotions actually reduce profits for most brand owners. An analysis a few years ago by Nielsen suggested that 84% of price promotions are actually unprofitable if you analyse them properly. Worse still, repeated price promotions increase price sensitivity. You're teaching people to buy on deal. That reduces your pricing power and therefore erodes your margins. And as I just argued, at the moment, the key job for marketing is to support and increase margins. So you really don't want to be promoting the hell out of your brand and reducing your margins at a time like this. Price promotions don't make much sense for many brands in normal conditions, but when costs are rising like they are now, I would say for many people they are madness. So if you are forced to discount, discount modestly because some retailers will demand it. But if you can avoid discounting and if you can cut price promotions, I would recommend that you do so. I've seen some amazing examples of this during my career. One that particularly stands out in my memory was a brand that found itself in a situation with tight supply and decided, because supply chains were tight at that time, to turn off price promotions for a 6-month period. That brand saw an immediate 20% increase in its profit. That was the easiest way to increase profitability for a brand that I've ever seen, simply turning off price promotions. You might want to bear that lesson in mind. So if price promotions are not the answer, what is? Well, the answer is to use brand advertising to support firmer pricing. We've known for many years that besides the obvious effect of advertising, which is to sell more stuff to increase sales volume, there is another more subtle effect, and that is that brand advertising can make people less sensitive to price. The work that Peter Field and I have done with the IPA data bank shows that the more that you strengthen brand metrics like awareness, salience, fame, mental availability, emotional bonding with the brand, the bigger the reduction in price sensitivity, the bigger the reduction in the price elasticity, and the higher the price that you can charge for the product. Only brand advertising can do this. Sales activation, performance marketing, direct marketing, we've not seen any examples in our data of that kind of activity being used to reduce price sensitivity and increase margins and support price. And in fact, a great deal of performance marketing actually increases price sensitivity. So I would recommend, at a time of high inflation, rising costs like now, a smart move for anyone who can do it would be to shift money from price promotions into brand advertising. Within that, we find that video advertising in all its forms tends to be better than other forms of advertising to reduce price sensitivity and increase margins. There is something about the emotional power of video that shifts the focus away from rational things like price and product and to more touchy-feely things, how one feels about the brand, the bond with the brand. Video can do that. Video and music, audio-visual media, have an extraordinary power for creating that emotional bond, which makes price less important in the decision. And obviously, TV is a very powerful medium for doing that. In fact, nearly all of the cases that we have in the IPA data bank that show a reduction in price sensitivity involve TV.